We are back. Made it home from Athens. Watched the Georgia game again, and we're talking about all of the stuff that I saw when I watched it back a second time. There's some new thoughts, maybe a few new takes, all of it today on the Locked On Bulldogs podcast.
You are Locked On Bulldogs, your daily podcast on the Georgia Bulldogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is up, everybody? I am Daniel. Clint had a heck of a time getting home from Athens, and so giving him the night off tonight. But so happy that you're here on the Locked On Bulldogs podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen. Thanks for coming back for another week of shows. Obviously, Georgia riding high, 6-0, going into the Vanderbilt week. We got lots to talk about on the show today. Apologize for the episode getting out so late on this Monday, but the Braves game just ended, and so I am coming down from a very emotional high after watching Bryce Harper get thrown out at first base to end the game on a base running blunder. Michael Harris with an unbelievable catch in the outfield. This is not a Braves podcast, but I could go on and on. What an incredible game that was to watch. Another incredible game to watch was the Kentucky game last Saturday. I've got lots of thoughts. I'm going to talk about a Kerbanese expression, which, by the way, we are fluent in Kerbanese here on the podcast. If you want to get the shirt, bonfire.com/store/the199. I'm going to talk about a Kerbanese expression and why it's proven true this week. Going to talk about the most important player on the defense, in my opinion. And I'm going to talk about Carson Beck in the third segment and how good he is and how Kirby might have given us an indication of something for next year in the way that he's speaking to the media this year. So let me start here. Obviously, we came on this podcast on Friday. We were in the hotel room and we came on the podcast and we said there might be an offensive explosion against Kentucky. That was the title of the episode. We said we thought that Georgia might go out. Mike Bobo might go out and start slinging it, pitching it all over the yard. We said the offense might absolutely start fast. We said the offense might absolutely explode. And lo and behold, on Saturday night in Athens, what do you think happened? By the way, got roasted in the comments by the Kentucky fans, telling us that we've never watched a Georgia-Kentucky game before. We've never seen anything. When was the last time Georgia's offense exploded against Kentucky? When was the last time Georgia's offense did anything against Kentucky? Well, let me tell you, it was Saturday night in Athens. That was the last time it happened, because that's exactly what transpired. But you go back in the light of day and you watch the game, and this is not intended to be a wet blanket, but Kirby Smart is typically fond of saying, it's never as good as it seems. It's never as bad as it seems. That's an expression he's told us he got from his dad, longtime high school coach. Obviously something that he believes in very strongly. And it would seem, if you listen to the Overreaction show and you're coming out of the stadium on Saturday night, it would seem that Georgia's got the best offense in college football. And listen, I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't think Georgia's offense is very good. It would seem that Georgia's figured some things out, that Georgia's got some things going, that Georgia's on a different trajectory. And I think most, if not all of those things are still probably true. But I do want to point out something fairly obvious. We mentioned it. We alluded to it on Saturday when we talked. But the penalties early for Kentucky are the thing that got this game out of hand. And once the game got out of hand, there was no turning back. There was no reeling it back in. It was off the wagon and it was rolling down the hill, and there was it was a wrecking ball, as Kirby Smart said. And so that all happened. But it was the penalties for Kentucky, which I do think actually were brought on by some of the pressure that the Georgia offense put. The fact that the Georgia offense was moving the ball those first two drives, 75 yards and 82 yards, the first two drives, both resulting in touchdowns. I think that pressure could easily, you could point to that and say that's the reason, that could be the reason for some of these kind of bonehead penalties. We talked about the two offensive penalties. Let's say that those two offensive penalties result in 3 points each. Kentucky has a pretty good field goal kicker. And if Kentucky doesn't get those two penalties on the left guard, they are already in field goal range. They move the ball. So let's say 6 points. It's now 14-6. Yes? Georgia has the ball on its next possession, is backed up on the 5-yard line. Georgia eventually ends up going 95 yards for its third touchdown of the game. But that's not how that drive started. The drive started, if I remind you, with Georgia backed up on its 5-yard line, getting one first down, and then being stopped on third down. Pass was batted in the air, hit the ground, and Brett Thorson is trotting out onto the field to punt the ball. And Kentucky makes easily the dumbest penalty that they have in the entire game. Defensive lineman that bats the ball down just decides he is going to take an absolute cheap shot on a Georgia player coming off the field. And Georgia gets the first down. They go down, they score a touchdown. Now, Kentucky gets the ball on their next possession. That is their third possession of the game. And they move all the way down the field and they score a touchdown on that drive. So I know it doesn't always work this way and you can't always extrapolate this out. If Kentucky doesn't commit those penalties on offense, it's 14-6. Georgia gets the ball back. If Kentucky doesn't take a cheap shot at a Georgia offensive lineman, Georgia punts to them. Kentucky scored a touchdown on their next possession, which would mean instead of it being 21-7 at this point in the game, it would have been 14-13 at this point in the game. A totally different ball game. And we're feeling now, again, Georgia still could have gone on, and that offense was absolutely, from that point on, Georgia still dominated the game. Even if it's a 14-13 game there, you say, yeah, that doesn't matter because Georgia still dominated the game from that point. I get that. But there's something about the snowball rolling down the hill that maybe the game feels a little bit different if it's 14-13. All I'm trying to say is Georgia has a dominant offense, and I think the pressure that Georgia put on Kentucky contributed to some of the anxiety and the tight plays, the really dumb mistakes that Kentucky made. But Georgia still did play far from a perfect game on Saturday. This team still has a lot of work to do. And moral of the story, not necessarily trying to take anything away from Georgia. Moral of the story is I actually came away from watching that game the second time thinking, I think Kentucky is actually a lot better than they looked. I'm going to be really interested to watch Kentucky the rest of the season. They play Missouri on Saturday. That's a fascinating game for Georgia fans because team we just beat against another team that Georgia sees at home later in the season. I'm going to be fascinated to watch this Kentucky team. I think that they are much better than they looked on Saturday. I think they kind of ran into one of these classic Kirby Smart buzzsaw games. I don't necessarily know if that's a fair indication of who Kentucky is moving forward. I know we don't have any Kentucky fans still watching the show, but if you are still here, just know you're an idiot for thinking you could beat us. But I think you are better than you think or than you looked on Saturday. All right, we're coming right back after this and got lots more to talk about. Most important player on the defense, but first these. Let's talk about Athletic Brewing. Athletic Brewing Company. Now's the time for the Game Changer of the Week, brought to you by Athletic Brewing Company. My Game Changer of the Week in this game is Brock Bowers. 3 straight 100-yard games. Are you kidding me? He's going to break 1,000 yards receiving for the season for a tight end, which is unbelievable. He's going to break Terrence Edwards' records for most receiving yards in a single season for the University of Georgia. He is the best pass catcher to ever play at the University of Georgia. And he is the Athletic Brewing game changer of the week. Athletic Brewing Company has completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good. Athletic Brewing Company makes these non-alcoholic beers. They are great tasting and award-winning. They beat out full-strength beers in global competitions. They brew over 50 styles of craft non-alcoholic beer, including IPAs, Goldens, Sours, and many, many more. Whatever your favorite kind of brew is, they have it. They're constantly releasing limited edition styles to add to their variety. They're fit for all time, so you can drink them anywhere, anytime, and make any activity more enjoyable. Go to athleticbrewing.com. You go to athleticbrewing.com and use the promo code Locked On to get 15% off your first order. That's Locked On, LOCKEDON at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Near beer exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. All right, let's talk about my most important player on the defense. Again, somebody that we mentioned last night, not last night, on Saturday night when we did the overreaction show. But I need to give him a full segment here because I do not think it can be overstated. And I don't mean to pin everything on one person because that would be entirely unfair. But the more I watch and the more I went back and watched again and the more I've rewatched previous games, the more I have come to believe that this defense will be as good as number 10, Jamon Dumas-Johnson is for this defense. We came into this season thinking that this defense had a chance to be one of the best defenses that Kirby Smart had ever coached. Now, I think that ship has sailed. I don't think there's any way in this world that this defense could ever be considered as good as the 2021 or 2022 defenses for the University of Georgia. But one of the reasons we thought that they would be one of the best defenses that Kirby had ever coached was because of the strength of the inside linebacker position, JDJ, Pops, and Smile Mondon. Smile Mondon has largely played pretty well this season, and Jamon Dumas-Johnson has played honestly pretty terrible. He's looked sloppy in his run fits. He has missed tackles in the open field. He has jogged when it seemed like he should have been running. He has underperformed, and he even said earlier in the season he felt like he had underperformed this season. But in this game, we finally saw him come alive. Now, I don't know if it was, if it was an injury situation earlier in the season. I don't know if it was, just rattling out some cobwebs. I don't know if it had to do with the fact that in this game they blitzed him a little bit more. And so maybe things like that were able to get him going and get him fired up. But the plays that we saw made from number 10 in this game, the way that he attacked the line of scrimmage, the way that he defended the run, the way that he pursued and chased sideline to sideline, the way that he got after the quarterback, I thought the way that 10 played in this game was critical for Georgia's defensive success. And I'm going to say Georgia had quite a bit of defensive success. Now, I know the penalties contributed to Kentucky's lack of scoring early, but also keep in mind that one of Kentucky's 2 touchdowns was off of an interception returned back, to the 10-yard line. And so that's not really on the defense. And so really this defense gave up 1 touchdown on the day that was really their fault. Now, again, you could tack a couple field goals onto that if Kentucky doesn't. Still a good performance by the Georgia defense. And I'm putting a lot of that credit on number 10 in the middle. As he goes, so it seems that this Georgia defense goes. He is the emotional leader. He is the very clear vocal leader. He's the guy that everybody looks to on this unit. And quite honestly, he's supposed to be one of the best players on the field. If he is back to playing the kind of football that we saw last year when he was a finalist for best linebacker in college football, then this Georgia defense has got a chance to truly be a great defense again. I said there was no way that they could be as good as the Alabama defense this year. If Jamon Dumas-Johnson is playing at the level he's capable of playing, and if the corners continue to progress, which I thought we saw quite a bit out of Kamari Lassiter in this game, we still need to see it on Dalen Everett. We still need to see it on the other side, whether it's Julio or Dalen Everett. I don't know. Kamari Lassiter, though, it would go a long way towards solidifying this defense if he was a guy that we could count on down in and down out for the Georgia defense. Those two guys, really critical pieces. Loved what I saw from them on Saturday and hope to see more as the season progresses. Coming back for the 199 in segment 3, we're talking about Carson Beck and something Kirby Smart may have slipped in to his press conference that I thought was really particularly interesting, coming up right after this. But first, let's talk about eBay Motors. Maybe you're trying to sell a car. Maybe you're trying to purchase a car. Maybe you're trying to fix up a car so that you can sell it, or so that you can drive it, or so that you can give it to one of your kids for them to drive. eBay Motors has everything that you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers to roof racks to exhaust kits to LED headlights, much and much more. Whether you're into speed or power or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber, not cash. With all these parts, all at the prices that you want, it's hard not to turn your car into the MVP and bring it home. All you do is you put your car into your garage, and then every part you select, eBay Motors will tell you whether or not it's going to fit. It is a guaranteed fit. Your part is guaranteed to fit, or your money back. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. ebaymotors.com. The right parts, the right fit at the right price. All right, guys. Carson Beck's really good. I'm talking about, he's not pretty good. Carson Beck is really, really freaking good. He's the fourth best. He's fourth in passing in the country. Let's talk about offenses that are averaging offenses that are in Georgia's category. When you look at them statistically, you've got Washington and Oregon, some of the best offenses in the country. You've got USC, who is a joke of a team, by the way. USC needed triple overtime to beat Arizona. USC is going to get, this is early locks, USC is going to get housed by Notre Dame on Saturday. It's 2.5 right now. We don't normally give out early locks. I'm just saying this line might move. Lay the 2.5 with Notre Dame at home. USC is going to get throttled. I'm talking about 10, 13-point loss for USC on Saturday. The offense is not that good, and the defense is absolutely terrible. Georgia's offense is playing at one of the most efficient paces, putting up tons of yards. Carson Beck thrown for 300 yards in 3 consecutive games. The Georgia offense had 600 total yards on Saturday. Carson Beck he's efficient. He's in control. And Kirby at his press conference is asked 100 questions about Carson Beck, which is great. He deserves all the accolades. He's the SEC Offensive Player of the Week. He deserves everything that he's getting. Kirby's asked all these questions about Carson Beck. And the thing that he keeps going back to the most is that Carson Beck is not your typical first-year starting quarterback. A lot of schools in the SEC have first-year starting quarterbacks, right? Alabama, Jalen Milroe. A lot of these schools in the SEC have got quarterbacks that are starting for the first time, and a lot of them are struggling Not necessarily so with Carson Beck. Kirby Smart says it's because he's not your typical first-year starting quarterback because he's been in the system for 3 or 4 years now. And that makes a lot of sense. This isn't Carson Beck's first rodeo. Yes, has he ever been out there at Auburn in an environment like that as the starting quarterback? No, he hasn't. It's totally different than playing in practice. But all of the things other than the experience in the environments he has under his belt, the plays, the calls, the checks, the looks, what defenses are in, what coverages and what plays to call against what coverages and how to get out and how to work through your progressions. We're seeing that all from Carson Beck this year because he's really a veteran quarterback that's just out there on the field for the first time. Now, I think that's interesting because I think Carson Beck is a great story, and I think we're going to continue as Georgia continues to play well and Carson Beck continues to play well. You're going to hear more and more about him. I think he's got a chance to play his way into the first round of the NFL draft. I think he's got a chance to play his way into the Heisman Trophy conversation. All of these things I think are on the table for Carson Beck. But that's not the most interesting thing to me. The most interesting thing to me is how many times Kirby Smart seems to be emphasizing the importance of being in a system for multiple years and how it translates to success on the field. Now, what if I was to tell you that next year, the University of Georgia is going to have 3 options for its starting quarterback? Carson Beck's going to go to the NFL. They're going to have 3 options for their starting quarterback. One of them is going to be a true freshman. Not really 4 options for their starting quarterback. 2 of them are going to be true freshmen. Both of which very highly talented. Both of which are incredible football players. One of which all of you on this podcast are going to be clamoring in the comments and on Twitter needs to be the starting quarterback, blah, 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 Justin Fields, blah, blah. Those are the first 2 options. The third option is a guy who will be a redshirt freshman or a sophomore, depending on how many snaps Gunnar Stockton gets this year. I suspect that Gunnar Stockton will be a redshirt freshman going into next year with 1 year of experience in the system. And all of you in the comments are going to be talking about how Gunnar Stockton's the best quarterback on this team. And Gunnar Stockton's the guy that needs to be the starting quarterback. And Gunnar Stockton's the guy that's going to take us to the promised land. And Gunnar Stockton's the next blah, 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 blah. And then the other option is going to be the guy that is clearly the second best quarterback on the team right now. Clearly the guy that the coaches would turn to if something, God forbid, were to happen to Carson Beck. And is the guy that's going to be in his 4th year in the system under Todd Monken / Mike Bobo. Are they the same person? Have you ever seen them in the same place at the same time? You can't confirm or deny that they're not actually the same human being. And so I ask you, Georgia fans, before you get too worked up about true freshman 5-star Dylan Raiola, or before you get too worked up about your favorite quarterback, which I'm not even sure how you can have a favorite. I don't understand how you can have a favorite quarterback that's never played any meaningful action at Georgia. But your favorite quarterback, Gunnar Stockton, I think the starting quarterback job next year, and I'm not cheering for this because, again, I don't cheer for certain quarterbacks to play. I want whoever Kirby Smart thinks that gives us the best chance to win to play, because that guy has won us the national championship 2 years in a row and has us as the number 1 team in the country now in the 3rd year. I'm not cheering for this to happen, but you would be crazy if you did not acknowledge that Brock Vandagriff is the overwhelming favorite to be the starting quarterback for Georgia next year. And so I don't know why I'm telling you that. Maybe it's just so that you can be emotionally preparing yourself to calm down and stop screaming and trust Kirby Smart. He values experience more than anything else. And we're seeing with Carson Beck looked real shaky, if not bad, early in his career when he would get playing time in mop-up duty or at a G-Day game or whatever. Brock Vandagriff at times early in his career has looked really shaky, if not bad. Gunnar Stockton this year has looked really shaky, if not bad. Kirby Smart values experience. Brock Vandagriff is showing that experience has elevated him to the head of that next group of quarterbacks, and I would be shocked if Georgia doesn't open the season next year with Brock Vandagriff under center. I know that's a long way out. It's Vanderbilt week. We are going to talk about the Commodores, my hometown Commodores, and talk about whether or not Georgia's going to cover 31.5 points in Nashville. That's a lot of points, but have you ever seen Georgia play in Nashville? It is usually a blowout. All of that and more as we move through the week this week on the Locked On Bulldogs podcast. Thanks for subscribing. Leave us a comment, leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. We will be back tomorrow with a whole nother show for you and every day this week. Go Dogs.